Deputy McConalogue, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. Minister, this is to ask you, in light of the fact that Brexit is 6 weeks away, the contingencies being operationalised and the supports being put in place by your department to safe place and safeguard farmers and the agri-food sector in all scenarios, including and in particular the scenario of a hard Brexit.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. I've been addressing the immediate Brexit challenges through a range of budgetary measures aimed at improving competitiveness and developing market and product diversification. These measures include a €150 million low-cost loan scheme in 2017 to help reduce farm gate business costs, and a dedicated €50 million Brexit package in budget 2018, which included further additional funding to Bord Bia and Teagasc, as well as a contribution to a €300 million Brexit loan scheme, at least 40% of which is available to food business. In budget 2019, I announced a €78 million Brexit package for farmers, fishermen, food SMEs to cover additional costs related to Brexit. My colleague Minister for Finance, Pascal Donoghue, also announced the Future Growth Loan Scheme, which will be rolled out in 2019 and for which I had made provision of €25 million in 2018. The scheme will provide long-term unsecured investment finance for farmers and small-scale companies in the food and seafood sectors. On market and product diversification, the additional funding that I have provided to Bord Bia has been used inter alia to provide targeted advice to individual companies, as well as to conduct a market prioritisation exercise, which is now informing our approach to market diversification activities, including the choice of destinations for trade missions. Product diversification has also been supported through additional funding of €8.8 million to Teagasc to develop its National Food Innovation Hub and funding to support investment in the prepared consumer food sector. I and my officials have also been working very hard for quite some time to sensitise other Member States and European Commission to the potentially very severe impacts of Brexit on the Irish agri-food and fisheries sectors, and to the likelihood of specific supports being required in order to deal with these impacts. Most recently, I held bilateral meetings with Commissioner Hogan last week to discuss the potential impact of a disorderly Brexit on the Irish agri-food and fisheries sectors. Commissioner Hogan reiterated the EU's readiness to respond and support Ireland, and we will remain in contact on these issues as the situation evolves. As regards contingency planning, my department has been actively participating in the whole-of-government approach to prepare this contingency planning. We have fed into the overall Government Contingency Action Plan, which is published on the 19th of December, and we've been working very closely with colleagues in other departments and agencies to address in particular the requirements that will arise in relation to the implementation at ports and airports of import controls on agri-food products coming from the UK. These requirements are significant and arise in relation to carrying out documentary, identity and physical checks on imports of animals, plants and products of animal and plant origin as set out in the European Union legislation. Work in this regard has been focused on three key areas, namely infrastructure, staffing and information technology, and in three locations, that is Dublin Port, Rossall Airport and Dublin Airport. Throughout all of this work, the focus of the Department will continue to be on the need to discharge its legal responsibilities while ensuring the minimum possible disruption to trade.
Thank you. Deputy, 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach. Minister, a very large amount of your response to me is old news, in the sense that it's the same response that we've been getting for 2 years, particularly in relation to market diversification and the loan schemes that have been put in place, and of course which you've talked about for a long period of time, which have in many ways not been delivered up until now. Your response doesn't give any sense of the urgency associated with the fact that we're 6 weeks away from a potential hard Brexit, or the hard and fast measures that you are taking to ensure that the agri-food sector and the farming sector are protected in the event of a hard Brexit. As things stand, business doesn't know what the arrangements will be in 6 weeks' time. They are being left to try and prepare as best they can, but without any clarity from you or your department. Also, Minister, in relation to the financial supports that might be available, we don't have clarity in relation to that either. And when we look at the beef sector in particular, for example, where €750 million worth of tariffs potentially could be put on our beef exports to the UK, which would amount on average to about €400 of tariffs on your average animal. That is a very, very, very scary vista for our agri-food sector, and Minister, we need absolute clarity from you as Minister as to what preparations are in place and what we can expect in 6 weeks' time if there isn't a resolution and a deal in the interim period.
Thank you very much, Minister. 1 minute.
Thank you, Deputy. I mean, our endeavour to date has been building resilience within the sector. So the things we've invested in, for example, the announcement this week of the environmental efficiency programme in the beef sector, restoring cuts to the ANC, working with industry in terms of the Food Innovation Hub, the Prepared Consumer Foods Initiative, the Meat Technology Centre, low interest loans. That's building resilience within the sector here. Unfortunately, the premise of your question seems to be that preparedness can mitigate all of the impacts of a hard Brexit. It can't. The situation will change irreversibly once they leave. We hope they leave with a transition agreement and a future trading relationship. But even if we get to that optimum position regarding their departure, it will never be as good as we currently have. What we've been engaged with, apart from building the resilience inside and outside the farm gate, is engaging with all of our EU partners, creating the awareness of our exposure, which is unique in terms of its extent relative to other member states of the European Union, and preparing them to respond. And you mentioned tariffs, that's one area. But unfortunately, we don't know at this point in time what the UK's response is going to be. Tariffs, no tariffs, somewhat in between in terms of protecting the value of the market for us. So until that becomes clear, it won't be possible to respond in a meaningful way. But having prepared the groundwork, I'm satisfied that both in terms of latitude to the state and the exchequer and EU awareness, that in terms of CMO regulations and exceptional aid measures, that we have in place the groundwork to enable both to respond as needed.
Of course, Minister, preparedness can't mitigate all the massive disturbances that Brexit will bring, but that's no excuse for not being fully prepared. And unfortunately, it would seem that the government's approach over the last 2 years, while the national message has been that we must prepare for the worst but hope for the best, that from a government point of view, there's been much more time and focus on hoping for the best than there has been on being prepared for what might happen in 6 weeks' time. And in terms of engagement from your government with the agri-food sector, it has been very minimal in terms of giving any clarity around what they can expect in 6 weeks' time if there is a hard Brexit. That simply has been absent from the government's preparations in relation to this. We have seen back in September, back at the end of the summer, you, along with the Taoiseach, after your cabinet meeting in Kerry, announced that there would be 300 SBS inspectors employed to be prepared for Brexit by the end of March. That was later downgraded by yourself to 116. As of today, we don't know how many are going to be in place by the end of March. Again, a reflection of the fact that we are not particularly in any way prepared, Minister. What we need to see now, over the next short number of days, is absolute clarity, and as far as can be given, Minister, given to the agri-food sector in relation to what is facing them and how they're going to operate in terms of revenue and standards after the 29th of March, if there's a hard Brexit, and also a clear plan as to how we're going to respond in terms of market supports and keeping our trade going to the UK market in the event that there's a hard Brexit.
Thank you. Final comment, Minister.
Could I just say that the accusation that there has been no engagement with the industry in all its manifestations is entirely wrong. And I can perhaps understand why the Deputy might say that, but it is entirely wrong, and the industry wouldn't support your contention in that area either. There's been extensive and ongoing, almost daily engagement and consultation with various aspects of the industry in all its forms. Unfortunately, what you're looking for, Deputy, is clarity where none exists in respect of what the impact will be. And that depends entirely on how the UK will respond when they leave. But what we have done is prepared, insofar as we can, for all of the eventualities, and that includes exceptional aid measures, state aid, flexibility, etc. On the issue of contingency planning and preparedness, I mean, we are and will be in a position, if the UK leaves without a deal, to meet all of our obligations in terms of treating the UK as a third country and how we deal with imports from there. And bear in mind, we are the UK's biggest trading partner in terms of their agri-food industry. So in terms of the obligations on us to have the necessary portal inspections for agri-food products, animal products and byproducts of plant and animal origin, all of the necessary staffing arrangements, be they portal inspectors, veterinary supervision, all of that will be in place by the required date at the aforementioned locations, Rosslare, Dublin Port and in Dublin Airport.